Most people see a title or net worth and they lose their ability to think critically. It's like a spell. They see the zero in someone's bank account, or they see a title next to someone's name, and suddenly that person is infallible. Their words are gospel, and their flaws, well, those are just eccentricities. We have been conditioned to worship the results so much that we have stopped looking at the substance. A few years ago, I was sitting in a room filled with millionaires and high earners, people who are supposed to be the leaders of our industry, and I watched them fall for a mirage created by a motivational speaker who was being paid five figures in order to train executives on how to be successful. I looked around and everyone was clapping, taking notes, and nodding along. And, well, I was just sitting there wondering if they were hearing the same hollow words that I was. In this world that demands you to play along, the people who refuse to nod are cast as the villain. If you refuse to feed the egos of the gurus, or you call out a humble performance for exactly what it is, shallow, people get uncomfortable. They call you cynical and difficult. But I realized that day when I was sitting in that room that I would much rather be a villain in a fake story than be a background character in a lie. I'm done with being a yes man for mediocrity. I'm not here to give you 5 tips on how to be optimistic. I'm here to talk about why the top is rotting and why people need to stop being starstruck by people who haven't earned or deserve our respect. Your respect. Hi, my name is Kiara, and this is my villain origin story. So, what exactly was this life changing, high level advice that the CEOs were paying 10,000s to hear? I will give it to you for free. The motivational speaker said, give to others, be grateful, serve others, be forgiving, and be optimistic. Let that sink in. This is advice that you can find in a 30-second Google search. If you ask a child would be able to tell you this. But because it came from a man who was being paid by executives to give advice, it came with a hefty price tag, which I will dissect in just a moment. But first, we need to look at the foundation of this motivational speaker. He spent the next portion of the speech breaking down his life. He never had to financially struggle. He had parents that were supportive, siblings that were supportive, friends that were supportive, a business partner that did all the heavy lifting, a religious community that caught him every time he tripped, and he married a woman who he said was the most caring and understanding person in the world, and his kids followed suit. He also grew up in the time when the economy was such that you could buy a single family home with your lunch money and a handful of strawberries. He didn't build a mountain, he was born on the peak. And he spent his entire life looking down at the people in the valley and telling them how great the air was up there. And also telling them that they could get up to the peak as long as they were just optimistic. Here's the truth that people like him will never understand. It's easy to be optimistic when the floor underneath you has never given out. It's easy to be optimistic when you never had to choose between rent and food. It's easy to be optimistic when you truly have never been betrayed. Shallow advice like that only works for people who have never been in a real storm. When you have been through the rain, when you have built your life up from the literal mud, you don't want someone telling you to be optimistic. You want the truth. You want strategy. You want someone who knows what it feels like when the lights go out. If you're listening to this and you feel a wave of disgust at a guru telling you to just stay positive, it's because your internal nonsense detector is working perfectly fine. People like this aren't leaders, they're salesmen. They're selling you hollow advice in order to fund their humble lifestyle. They aren't training you to succeed, they're training you to be a background character in their performance, and people are more than willing to do it. Speaking of humble, there was another piece of advice that he gave to us in his great speech, my absolute favorite. Be humble. In the same breath, he told us that he lives in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the United States where executives of companies like Apple and Google live. He also has a perfectly manicured golf course in his backyard that comes with a clubhouse that has Michelin-Star chefs ready to cater to their every whim. And then he dropped the line, but I don't use the Clubhouse because I'm a humble and down to earth guy. I clearly remember sitting there thinking, if you have access to all of this, why aren't you using it? If you don't need all of it, why are you living in that neighborhood? Are you simply not using the amenities provided, or are you lying just so that you can be seen as a humble and relatable man? That's not humility, that's using your lifestyle as a prop. You are trying to be relatable while simultaneously making sure that the audience do not forget how rich you are. And then he casually slips in that he has a ranch house in a different state that is so massive that he needs a dedicated vehicle on that ranch to get from point A of the property to point B. He then told us that he would never buy a new car that was $70,000. No, no, no. Why would he do that when he is a humble man who purchased a used car instead for $50,000? He sat there with a straight face, pretending that spending an average American's annual salary on a vehicle was a sign of his modesty. He wanted us to be impressed by his frugality while simultaneously making sure we remember that he needs a dedicated fleet for his massive ranch. It was tone deaf, it was arrogant, and it was fake. But the highlight of the performance, towards the end, he told us his rate: $15,000 for individual sessions and $80,000 for a group session. It wasn't his way of telling us that's the cost to listen to him again, but he was speaking in price tags to show his worth. The second he mentioned price tags, I disconnected because the people who speak in price tags lack internal capacity. When someone leads with how much their car is worth or how much their house is worth, they're telling on themselves. They don't believe their character, wisdom, or presence holds respect, so they prop themselves up with numbers. They use price tag as a shortcut for authority because the person underneath the suit is hollow. Now compare that to real excellence. Let's take Rolex for example. Rolex doesn't run ads telling you to buy their watch because it's expensive. They don't lead with price tags to show their success. They show you the craftsmanship, the history, the precision, the obsession with details. People who value that level of mastery will pay for the substance, not the number. It's the same reason why I love Bugatti. People always ask me why I want such an expensive car when a cheaper sedan can get me to my destination just fine. They also love to remind me that a Bugatti is a depreciating asset. To those people, you miss the point entirely. To you, life is a series of utility checks. But to me, excellence isn't about utility. Those people will never understand the feeling of the engine roar or how much effort is put into each little detail of the interior down to the last stitch. They won't understand that it's not about getting there. It's about the standards you set for in your life. There is a world of difference between liking something for its quality and needing to tell the price of it in order to feel important. If you need to tell me the cost of something in order to show your worth, you have already lost me. So I've talked about the person standing on the stage. Now let's talk about the people sitting in the front row, the ones who have been paying him and people like him for decades. If you're a CEO who's paying $15,000 for an individual session or $80,000 for a group session to hear such hollow and trivial advice, I have to ask, what exactly are you buying? You aren't buying strategy, you aren't buying innovation, you're essentially buying a vibe. You are paying an ego tax to literally say that you were in that room. So does this mean as a CEO you value the cost of advice more than the quality of it? Is this why corporate culture feels so soulless today? It's being modeled by people who have replaced leading with performing. When a leader values the price tag of a consultation over the quality of it, they're telling their entire organization that optics matter more than the results. They have turned leadership into a theater performance. They want to look like the type of person that listens to a Palm Beach guru rather than the type of person who rolls up their sleeves and finds the solution to the problem, just like a leader should. Though this does explain why so many companies are hemorrhaging their money and losing their identities right now. They're so desperate to be told what they want to hear for their optimism to be validated that they have completely disconnected from reality. They have surrounded themselves with yes men and high priced egos. If you're paying someone $80,000, will they really tell you that you're failing? You would truly hope so, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Instead, they're telling you to stay positive while the ship is sinking. The leaders are buying a comfortable lie than a necessary truth. And in business, a comfortable lie is the most expensive thing you can buy. It haunts me to this day that this is the caliber of the person who's training the people who run our world. It's a low level thinking that is disguised as high level access. If you're a leader who's paying $15,000 an hour to be told, be grateful, you aren't a leader. Real excellence doesn't need to be validated by a price tag. Real strategy doesn't need access to a Michelin-Star Clubhouse to feel validated. But we have reached a point where status is the only thing these executives value, and it's exactly why their companies are failing. We are seeing this fallout everywhere. Companies are so desperate to cater to everyone that they have forgotten who they are. They have traded in their target audience for mass appeal that no one actually wants. But I'm going to save the deep dive of corporate destructions and the plague of yes men for another video, because once you see the pattern that people are paying for to be lied to, you can't unsee it. Back to the topic at hand. People often ask me how I have the nerves to speak this way about those people who the world worships, but the truth is I've never known any other way. My mom often tells me that I can speak to anyone without hesitation, be it someone off the street or someone whose net worth rivals that of a small country. My pulse doesn't change. I used to wonder why people found that strange, but then I realized it was because I never learned how to be starstruck. To me, that's just a form of temporary blindness. You let the glitter of someone's life prevent you from seeing who they actually are. Here's my perspective on status. Status is a costume, not an identity. To me, a king is just a man with title, wealth, and power. Take away that crown, take away that kingdom, and who is he underneath? That's what matters to me. A celebrity, on the other hand, is just a person with fame and riches. They put on their pants one leg at a time, just like we do. But they have been told so often by others that they're above all that they start to believe that PR. When you see people this way, they're just a normal person way, then the world becomes much more of a level playing field. I don't see a CEO. I see a person who's stressed and surrounded by yes men. Think about it. These yes men are being paid hundred thousands in order to improve the company's revenue, but they can only smile and nod along because they're too afraid to tell the truth or they simply don't care. This is the reason why people would see me as a villain. It's because I don't play along by their rules. I see a king as just a man and a guru as a salesman. If you're someone who has been managed by people who want something from you or they're dazzled by what you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the feeling of relief when you finally meet someone who can look past all of that and see you for who you are, see into your soul. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this today, as I will be making a video in the future about why you should see people for who they truly are. So why am I on YouTube? Why have I finally decided to hit the record button and put my video into the void, even though the motivational speaker incident happened years back? I'm making this channel because I'm looking for people who saw exactly what I saw in that room a few years back, for the people who didn't clap, for the people who weren't impressed by the $50,000 used car, or the Michelin Clubhouse stories, because they know those things are just stage props. I am looking for people who are searching for something actually real. There's a massive difference between someone who wants to be motivated and someone who wants to succeed, because those who truly want to succeed aren't looking for someone to pump them up with shallow optimism. They aren't looking for a guru to tell them they're doing great. They are looking for someone who can lock eyes with them and tell them exactly what they're doing wrong. They want the truth even if it burns, because they know that truth is the only thing that is going to change the trajectory of their life or their business. They don't want a cheerleader. They want someone who can show them a mirror. I'm not here to cater to mass audiences. I'm not here to be the kind woman who's going to tell you, just stay positive and everything will be okay. I'm here for high level thinkers, the truth seekers, and the people who are tired of performances. I see you, I see the fakes, and I'm just getting started. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about why your company is failing because you have surrounded yourself by people who are too afraid to tell you the truth. I'll see you then.